Board Chair. This workshop of the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach is hereby convened at 3:31 p.m. on this 22nd day of September 2020. Pursuant to the state of emergency related to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Governor's executive orders, the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as amended by the Virginia General Assembly, and the School Board's April 7th, 2020 emergency resolution, the school board and selected staff members will meet in person at the school administration building. However, at this time, it is impractical and unsafe to allow other persons to attend the school board meeting due to physical distancing and safety precautions related to the pandemic. Members of the public will be able to observe the school board meeting through live streaming on vbschools.com, broadcast on VBTV Channel 47, and Zoom. Madam Clerk, would you take attendance roll, please? And announce also who's participating via Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Present in school board chambers is Ms. Felton, Ms. Anderson, Mr. Edwards, Ms. Melnick, Ms. Riggs, Ms. Holtz, Ms. Rye, Ms. Manning, and Ms. Hughes. Attending via Zoom is Ms. Weems.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I would like to make a statement. Most of you know that I have severe COPD, and I wear a mask because I feel it's the right thing to do, despite the fact that it's very uncomfortable for me. So I feel at the moment the conditions in this room are not safe for me or my health. So I have to leave, but I will be attending the meeting somewhere in the building. I will not be returning home. Thank you.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, you'll let us know, or Mr. Dinwill, when we have both members signed on to Zoom?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, with that, admin matters, we have Mrs. Anderson.
So this Thursday, VSBA will have a workshop via Zoom, so we will be able to view the workshop via Zoom here in the administration building. The workshop is on legislative advocacy. Please email Regina to let her know. My fellow board members, please let Regina know if you will be here on Thursday from 9 to 2 for the workshop. Or if you can't make Thursday from 9 to 2, the workshop will still be available for viewing here in the building for 1 week afterwards. So you just need to let Regina know what day you'd like to come. And if you'd like to be here Thursday, that's fine. That's live. But after that, it will be videoed. Correct? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. My only update is just that the adopted school list in the next 48 hours will be distributed to all of you. And then the principals will be informed in their next packet. And with that, I just want the chance to speak first with senior staff about the conditions, the present conditions in terms of our typical roles with that. So I'll try to include that all in the same email. Thank you. Anybody else before we get started? All right then, with that, we are a slight deviation here. We are starting with digital learning one-to-one evaluation update given our staff availability, and there is a tie-in, as most things are, with the reopening of schools. With that, it's Mr. Robert, and I don't want to mispronounce your last name. Weigel. Okay, Weigel. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chair Melnick, members of the school board. There we go. That'll work. Let me start over. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chair Melnick, members of the school board, and Dr. Spence. My name is Robert Weigel. I'm the research specialist in the Office of Research and Evaluation. Today I'll be presenting the results from the one-to-one digital learning initiative. It's the evaluation update. The evaluation update you received in your agenda materials provides additional details. The One-to-One Digital Learning Initiative started in 2015-2016 as the Digital Learning Anchor Schools Initiative, with 11 schools field testing the usability of school-assigned devices and the technology infrastructure within the schools. Since that beginning, the One-to-One Digital Learning Initiative has expanded to all schools, and by 2018-2019, the division provided 1st through 12th grade students with an HP Chromebook, along with classroom sets of devices for kindergarten students. The initiative is supported by at least one full-time instructional technology specialist and technology support technician per school. Students in grades 5 through 12 were able to take their school-assigned device home with them for their schoolwork, and this home use was expanded to younger students after the school closure in March 2020. In addition, throughout the One-to-One Digital Learning Initiative's implementation, students in need of internet access at their residence have been able to receive a mobile hotspot from the school division. When the One-to-One Digital Learning Initiative began in 2015-2016, it was evaluated for 2 years. This evaluation update conducted during 2019-2020 was the result of a recommendation from the November 2017 program evaluation. The overall purpose of the evaluation update was to monitor the progress of the One-to-One Digital Learning Initiative, including its continuing alignment with evidence-based best practices. The evaluation update examined staff perceptions of the initiative's alignment with best practices, staff and student perceptions of the initial digital learning, teacher and student outcomes defined for the initiative, and overall satisfaction. Additionally, while not planned as part of the update, we gathered some data from students and staff about the impact of the One-to-One Digital Learning Initiative and what that had on their transition to learning at home during the school closure. The data collected included stakeholder surveys for 4 groups: students in grades 3 through 12, teachers, technology support technicians, and administrative staff, which included principals, assistant principals, and instructional technology specialists. The surveys were administered during the school closure in May. The survey link for students was provided in Schoology, and staff members received an email with a survey link. The response rates on the slide range from 22% for students to 64% for administrative staff. Additional data were collected by reviewing official VBCPS communications and documents. Staffing data was provided by HR, and program-specific data was provided by the Departments of Teaching and Learning and Technology. One focus of the evaluation update was alignment with best practices. Listed on the slide are 8 components of the One-to-One Digital Learning Initiative's best practices from the literature. Staff groups were asked various survey items related to these best practices, and results for selected survey items will be presented in the following slides. As a preview, overall results regarding alignment with best practices were very positive. For the noted items on the slide, at least 80% of each staff group at each school level agreed with statements related to the best practice. For stakeholder engagement and infrastructure survey items, at least 77% of each staff group at each school level agreed. Perceptions of usage policies were more variable depending on staff group and school level. Results for specific survey items related to student-centered learning best practices are shown on the slide. Ranges include results for each staff group at each school level. At least 96% of administrative staff agreed that teachers supported student-centered learning. At least 85% of teachers and administrative staff agreed staffing was adequate to support instructional needs. And at least 87% of teachers and administrative staff agreed professional development helped teachers with student-centered strategies. Survey results related to technology integration and immersion showed that 98% of administrative staff indicated technology was at least moderately integrated with instruction at their school. Further, 95 to 100% of teachers and administrative staff agreed that technology had become a more integral part of teaching and learning at their school. Survey results related to professional learning best practices for one-to-one initiatives showed that at least 82% of staff groups at each school level agreed there had been sufficient professional development to implement the One-to-One Digital Learning Initiative. At least 85% agreed there was sufficient support for staff to implement the initiative. And at least 89% agreed professional learning helped teachers with strategies for integrating technology. The chart on this slide displays the survey results from teachers, administrative staff, and TSTs related to the best practices of equity. at least 85% of survey respondents at each school level agreed that the one-to-one digital learning initiative was implemented in an equitable manner by providing all students the resources they needed to benefit from the one-to-one initiative, such as technology outside of school and appropriate resources for schools. Survey results related for best practices related to effective leadership showed at least 87% of each staff group at each school level agreed that adequate resources have been allocated to support the initiative overall. In addition, at least 80% of teachers and at least 90% of administrative staff agreed there was a clear vision and expectation for teachers and students. Staff were asked about stakeholders being actively involved in the planning and implementation of the one-to-one digital learning initiative, another best practice. Agreement percentages regarding stakeholder engagement range from 78 to 89% for teachers and administrative staff at each school level. Additionally, 81% of TSTs across the division agreed with the survey item. Additionally, 81% of TSTs agreed with that survey item. When asked about best practices related to infrastructure for one-to-one initiatives, relatively high percentages of staff groups agreed that the division's infrastructure adequately supports the initiative. All agreement levels were above 80%, with the exception of high school teachers at 77%. In addition, 85 to 96% of staff groups agreed that staffing was adequate to support schools' needs for technical support for the initiative. The last best practice area assessed was related to usage policies. Staff groups were asked their level of satisfaction with 4 policies. High percentages of all staff groups were satisfied with the division's acceptable use policy and the device management policy, with 90% or more reporting satisfaction with each policy. Perceptions of content filtering and damaged device policies were more varied. The chart displays teacher, administrative staff, and TST satisfaction rates with the content filtering policy. From 70 to 86% of teachers at each level and 73 to 83% of administrative staff were satisfied with content filtering. TSTs had the highest satisfaction rates at 90%. When asked about their satisfaction with the lost or damaged device policy, high percentages of teachers and administrative staff were satisfied, but at the division level, TSTs had the lowest satisfaction rate at 72%. Teacher outcomes for the one-to-one digital learning initiative included providing authentic learning experiences, empowering student choice, and providing personalized learning experiences and professional growth. Teachers were provided an opportunity to respond to statements regarding each outcome. The range of teacher agreement rates for each teacher outcomes are displayed in green. Overall, at least 90% of teachers who responded to the survey agreed with statements related to each of the teacher outcomes. There were 5 student outcomes for the one-to-one digital learning initiative. Students responded to survey items related to each outcome. When student survey responses were analyzed related to the outcome of being active partners in their learning, 78 to 85% of students at each school level agreed that having a device allowed them to make more decisions about their learning. For gaining a global perspective, the student agreement rates range from 63 to 71% across all school levels. In the area of collaboration, 49 to 69% indicated that they used their device to work together on class projects with other students. In the area of academic mastery and growth, we had 2 questions associated with that. 72 to 83% of students agreed that their devices helped them better understand what they were learning, and 74 to 87% agreed that the device helped them show what they learned. The last student outcome was related to students becoming responsible and ethical digital citizens. From 80 to 92% of students agreed their device helped them learn how to use technology in responsible ways. Overall, results were generally more positive at the elementary and middle school levels, with the exception of collaboration, where higher percentages of high school students reported using their assigned school devices to work with other students on class projects. Although not originally planned as part of the one-to-one digital learning evaluation update, several survey items asked how the one-to-one initiative impacted students and teachers as they were learning and teaching virtually during the school closure. When students were asked what device they used to complete their work when away from school, at least 88% at each school level indicated that at some point they used their school-assigned device to complete their schoolwork. Additionally, as displayed in the chart, 91% of elementary students, 86% of middle school students, and 75% of high school students agreed that having the school-assigned device helped them to transition to learning from home. Teachers were asked about students' participation and engagement during school closure. A majority of teachers indicated that at least one half of their students had consistently participated in remote learning in the past week, ranging from 78% at the high school level to 87% at the elementary school level. Additionally, at least 88% of teachers indicated that students who participated in remote learning were somewhat or very engaged during the learning. Overall, stakeholders were satisfied with the one-to-one digital learning initiative during 2019-2020. At least 92% of teachers, 96% of administrative staff, and 96% of TSTs indicated that they were satisfied. Additionally, from 80% of high school students to 92% of elementary students were satisfied with their assigned device. To summarize, the results from the evaluation update show that based on staff perception, the VBCPS one-to-one digital learning initiative was aligned to a large extent with 8 best practices identified in the literature regarding one-to-one programs. Staff perceptions of acceptable use and device management policies were positive. For some staff groups, there was somewhat lower satisfaction for content filtering policies, especially among secondary teachers, and also for the lost or damaged device policies for TSTs. Teacher survey agreement rates for related to the 4 teacher outcomes were very positive at 90% or above. Students' perceptions of 5 student outcomes were more varied. Results were generally more positive at the elementary and middle school levels, with the exception of collaboration, where a higher percentage of high school students reported using their school-assigned device to work with other students on class projects. Results showed that 88% of students used their school-assigned device to complete their schoolwork during the school closure, and from 75 to 91% of students agreed their school-assigned device helped them transition to learning from home. Relatively high percentages of teachers indicated that at least half of their students participated in remote learning, and at least 88% of teachers indicated students who participated were somewhat or very engaged in remote learning. Overall, stakeholder satisfaction with the one-to-one digital learning initiative was high. At least 92% were satisfied. At least 92% of the staff were satisfied, and 80 to 92% of students were satisfied with their school-assigned device. Following the completion of the evaluation update, the results were presented to the Planning and Performance Monitoring Committee on September 1. After that presentation, the PPMC requested that we share this information with the full school board at a workshop, which we're doing now. Additionally, the PPMC asked several questions focused on students' ability to access digital education resources and how student collaboration will be facilitated in the digital environment. I will now turn the presentation over to Mr. Din and Dr. Rogers to address those questions.
Good afternoon. So obviously, in today's learning environments, internet access is an essential ingredient to the success of our students. We've known this since the school closure in March. Since early April, we've listed a menu of internet access solutions on the VBCPS support.com technology support website. A menu of options because no one solution fits all situations. While Cox provides service to 97% of Virginia Beach, we still have children in the remaining 3%. Hotspots are adequate for internet access if you've got a good cell signal. But, as any of us who have wandered around a building looking for those magical bars to appear on our phones know, that's not always possible. We've handed out 500 hotspots since April, and we'll be distributing another 500 in the weeks ahead for those that responded in the enrollment questionnaire in August that they need additional internet support. We monitor the usage on hotspots and will reallocate them as appropriate to make the most of the division's $240,000 investment in this technology for our students. We are also investing in outdoor Wi-Fi access in schools. This will allow teachers and students options for outdoor face-to-face learning and emergency access for those without other options. Finally, we continue to work with local groups to see how we can develop answers to unique situations, like students in care facilities on military bases or other centers around the community. It is frustrating that these solutions can't seem to happen soon enough, but we've made significant progress in meeting the internet access needs and will continue to do so. And with that, I'll hand it over to Dr. Rogers.
Thank you. And welcome, Dr. Rogers.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Den. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chair Melnick, school board members, and Dr. Spence. We are pleased that the district is moving in the right direction to support digital learning as evidenced by our teacher agreement rates and students feeling that our teachers are supportive of student-centered learning. Our professional learning and experience with using a learning management system and mechanism with which to support curriculum instruction has proved beneficial in fostering collaboration amongst our students. While we have much to do and much to celebrate with our technology initiative, we will continue to look for ways in which to support students by leveraging technology to promote student agency, student-centered learning, where they are active partners in their learning, and providing them with many opportunities to collaborate. For example, our students are able to collaborate now using many of the Google products, such as Google Docs and Google Slides, which provide students the opportunity to develop products and projects simultaneously. Our teachers are also taking advantage of the breakout rooms that are part of Zoom and will soon be a part of Google Meet for students to answer questions and solve problems together. Teachers are also providing opportunities for students to use collaborative whiteboard applications like Jamboard, where students can be assigned different pages to work on them together. One of my personal favorite collaborative tools for students and staff to use is called Padlet. With this collaborative tool, teachers are able to post questions, photos, or videos on Padlet, where students are able to post an initial response, as well as having an opportunity to respond to their peers' posts. And now, I will answer any questions that you may have, or will answer any questions that you may have. You want to close this out? Thank you. Yep.
Just you. Okay, Mrs. Melnick.
So, Mr. Din, I guess this is for you. Beyond the 500 hotspots that we're going to be distributing, do you know what our need is beyond that?
We had approximately 1,500 individuals respond in the fall enrollment questionnaire that they needed internet support. Of that, we have compared that against options that are available for them, and we have approximately 350 individuals who will need hotspots for this coming school year, for this school year.
Okay.
And we have enough to meet that need and then some.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, including any Zoom questions, Madam Clerk? Mhm. Mrs. Hughes.
Part of the stated purpose of the Safe Learning Centers was to provide a place for people who might be low income and not have adequate internet or reliable internet access. How many students do we have in there that we're solving this problem for?
I don't have that information in front of me. Mrs. Hughes, I can research it. There were two different types of learning centers. There were those run by Parks and Recreation and those run by Virginia Beach City Public Schools. Our priority with Virginia Beach City Public School Centers was to serve our staff. The Safe Learning Centers run by the city had a focus of serving first responders, and they also operated centers in the tri-campus area, which would be low-income families. I just don't know what the enrollment numbers were, but we can get that information for you.
Well, I thought we had stated during the meeting where we discussed it that there were two priorities. One was for staff and one was for low income. And at school, there's no charge. There is a charge at the rec centers, correct?
There was consideration given on the tri-campus area by Parks and Rec for those families.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? All right, with that, we thank you very much. So that brings us to the forecast for the second quarter of October, November, December 2020. And Dr. Bergen is here in Dr. Spence's stead.
So do you all have a copy of the forecast in front of you? Great, so I'll just highlight the workshops for you. When, as a senior staff, we select these workshop topics, we reflect back on the information we collected from you all collectively at the retreat, topics of which you were interested in. And then there are some topics that are just recurring annual topics. So I'll read off, do they not have a copy? Yep, it's so tiny, you can't see.
I think
it. So
we'll rely on you to read aloud because we're all a little challenged.
I will go slowly and read from, following along from the screen. So you have two meetings in October, the 13th and the 27th. On the 13th, we're going to come back. It's been, I think, at least 6 months since we had a water testing update for you. So Mr. Freeman and our operations team will provide a update in workshop format on water testing. And previously, over the last year, we talked with the board about an ongoing initiative from the Virginia Department of Education about open access resources, open educational resources, or ORE, pardon me. So our Department of Teaching and Learning will also have a workshop on open educational resources on that 13th. Forwarding on to the second meeting in October, that's the kickoff of the budget season, so or a budget-related topic, I should say. So that's the time of year we would normally look at a resolution regarding reversion funds and actual over/under budget funds. So we'll speak with the entire board on the 27th, and just prior to that, I believe Mrs. Weems is going to convene the PPMC to also talk with the CFO and superintendent about the information that'll be presented on the 27th. In November, you have just one meeting in November due to the holiday schedule and the City Council School Board Joint 5-Year Forecast presentation on the 17th. So on the 10th of November, that is typically the time of year we bring Joel Andrus from Kemper Consulting here to talk with you as an extension of the Legislative Committee. We'll talk about the legislative agenda for the 2021 General Assembly session. And we have a special education workshop also on the 10th for CSEP and TRAPE. December, you have two meetings. The first one is on the 1st of December, and that is typically the time of year that we do that very comprehensive update from Human Resources on annual recruitment, staffing, retention, and compensation. Given the length of the workshop and the comprehensiveness of those topics, it's the only workshop we have planned for the 1st of December. And then on the 15th, as a senior staff, we do not have a planned workshop because we're prioritizing that is a meeting that occurs each year for the board where you have your organizational matters. And depending on what's happening with the pandemic, you typically have a holiday reception that day as well. So we try to keep the workshop format shorter. But we can always add a workshop for the 15th at the discretion of the board leadership as we're doing agenda planning. The one thing you'll notice that's missing from this forecast by design are these regular recurring school reopening updates. We've been providing them as a senior staff every board meeting since I think March. We can certainly continue to provide updates as needed, particularly on focused topics at the request of the board, but we have not included in the workshop that it would continue to be a standing item. So with that, I will take your questions.
Mrs. Anderson.
So that was my question. I wanted to know on the 13th of October, by that time, we will have all elementary, hopefully, all elementary back. And 6th and 9th grade, hopefully, will be back. So I would like an update on the 13th as to where we are and what we're going to do, how it's been going. Because by that time, we'll have had elementary in for at least a week, week and a half, 2 weeks.
Sure.
So I would like to have that added to the 13th of October.
Okay. And yes, ma'am. And we can always add that topic for information. We've been duly adding it for workshop and information as we've gone along our way. So we can leave that for the agenda planning session to determine if it needs to be in workshop format and or in information.
Thank you, Mrs. Anderson. Anybody else? Mrs. Manning.
Thank you. I don't see the second page here, so I'm not sure what's on it. other than what you just mentioned. Our ad hoc student discipline committee had brought forth quite a few recommendations, and some of those staff was going to be giving us some briefings on that. I don't have that in front of me. I believe there was one on the base program and kind of an update on that. And then I don't know where we are with addressing the cell phone policy. I believe that was something that policy review committee was going to do. So if we could get that somehow added in there as an update on what the status is of those recommendations, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. We've not lost sight of those topics. As a senior staff, we talked about them, but all of us been so preoccupied with the reopening of schools, we didn't really have students in the building until today to even be concerned about cell phones in the building. But, yeah, we can work it
I'm
into this.
thinking, yeah, maybe for December
15th.
sometime.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Manning. Anybody else? And we're good with Zoom, Madam Clerk? Okay. So then that brings us to updates on the reopening of schools. Lots to report.
Yes,
Dr.
ma'am.
Bergen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Ms. Melnick, members of the board. For those students, parents, and staff who may be watching from Zoom, my name is Mark Bergen. I'm the Chief of Staff, and it's my pleasure to be again with you this afternoon to provide an update for the board and the community on our ongoing efforts at the start of this school year to support our students and staff with the safe reopening of schools. As we've done for the last, 6 or 8 presentations, we're going to follow a very similar format. I'll begin by reviewing the current health metrics, and then the order of presenters following me will be first Dr. Rogers, who's going to provide an instructional update, including sharing some information with you about this week, the return of designated special education groups yesterday and today. He'll be followed by Mr. Den, who's going to be providing some additional information, more than what you just heard in the last presentation, regarding our current and planned technology enhancements to support students and staff. He'll be followed by Mr. Freeman, who's going to provide an operational update specifically around facilities. And then the final presenter will be Dr. Robertson, who will conclude the presentation with an update on staffing, enrollment, and scheduling before opening the floor up to your questions. So before I get to our current health metrics, what you're seeing up on the screen is newly released guidance from the CDC. This was published by the CDC last Tuesday, and it is guidance to assist school administrators and local health officials in monitoring the local spread of COVID-19 and assisting in our decision-making, such as when to begin, continue, or pause in-person instruction. The core indicators within the updated guidance include measures of community burden, which coincidentally are the same 2 measures that we proposed in our reopening plan back in July, namely percentage of positivity and number of new cases on a rolling 7-day average. The CDC also has in their guidance the implementation of mitigation strategies, which also are all included in our reopening plan. And as listed on the bottom left-hand corner of the slide, those safety measures are the consistent and correct use of face masks, social distancing to the greatest extent possible, hand hygiene and respiratory etiquette, cleaning and disinfection, and finally contact tracing and collaboration with the local health department. I thought it would be helpful for you if I walked you through a crosswalk of this new CDC guidance in relation to the health metrics that are in our adopted plan. So to orient you to the slide, listed down the left-hand side, you have percent positivity by color, and then below that you have cases per day by color. The middle column is the CDC's recommended guidance from this past week, and then to the far right is what is in our reopening plan. So the first thing you'll notice is the CDC has an orange zone, and we do not. We have 3 colors, green, yellow, and red. They have green, yellow, orange, and red, which is similar to what the Virginia Department of Health is using in their guidance as well. What you will notice is the overlap between our health metrics and that of the CDC, particularly in percent positivity. Our green is defined as below 5%, and our red is above 10%, as is the CDC's. The difference being the CDC has an orange of of 8 to 10 and a yellow of 5 to 8, whereas our yellow is 5 to 10%. One of the more significant differences between our metrics and those of the CDC is in regards to number of cases, particularly for the green zone. Under the advice of our local panel of health physicians, we're using 10 cases per 100,000 individuals, which is consistent with the Virginia Department of Health's guidance, whereas the CDC is using a number of 20 cases per 100,000 individuals. So just by way of comparison, if the CDC guidance were being used, the entry into the green zone in Virginia Beach would be 53 cases per day as opposed to 26.5. But outside of that, there's not really substantial difference between the metrics that this board adopted as proposed by our local health panel and this latest recommendation from the CDC. Just wanted to bring that to your attention. So this slide will look familiar to you. We've been, along with you, we've been tracking the health metrics in the Eastern region. And you'll see from this chart, we've continued to make good progress in the Eastern region concerning percent positivity. As the screenshot here indicates from the VDH website, there's been a steady decline in the 7-day rolling average for percent positivity throughout August and September, with rates all in the yellow zone. And our current rate as of today is 5.6%, which is less than a percentage point away from the green zone of being 5% or less. And this is the companion screenshot for cases per day on a 7-day rolling average. And you will see, as we've talked about before, the high came in the summertime at 483 cases in July, and since then has been steadily declining, with the number of new cases falling into the yellow zone at 218 in late August, and then dipping down to 168 in early September. However, since then, the number of new cases has somewhat flattened out. There was a slight rise and then a slight decrease. And as of this morning, we're at 164.9 cases per day, which is not substantially different than where we were 2 weeks ago. So at this time, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Dr. Rogers, and he's going to provide an update on our instructional efforts, including the return of designated students within special education this week. Dr. Rogers.
Thank you, Dr. Bergen. And welcome, sir.
Good afternoon again, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, school board members. In an effort to ensure access to instruction for our students who have intensive support needs, designated students with disabilities at all grade levels, and whose parents selected option 1, face-to-face instruction, returned to school today.
Yes.
Yay, I'm excited.
Yes.
That's right, I'm excited. Students who return to school today include our students who are served in early childhood special education programs, adapted academic foundations programs, which are our cognitively impaired students, our functional academic foundation program, where we have our significantly impaired students, the supportive therapeutic education program, otherwise known as STEP, and our cross-categorical students, those students who receive 50% or more of their special education services in that setting, and then our CSEP students. So as a result, today we welcomed approximately 1,200 students to school this morning, and this is slightly more than 50% of the 2,350 students who receive special education services in the identified programs and settings. All these students will receive their special education and related services face-to-face, and also have an opportunity to participate virtually with their peers in the general education setting as appropriate. Face-to-face learning will take place as planned on Tuesdays through Thursdays, with students being able to participate asynchronously and sometimes synchronously as appropriate on Mondays. Other students with disabilities will be transitioned back to face-to-face instruction with their grade levels. I want to provide you with another little update. So in preparation for welcoming our students back for face-to-face learning, the Departments of Teaching and Learning and School Leadership have created practical professional learning for our teachers that's focused on how to provide concurrent face-to-face and virtual instruction to our students. The majority of this training will take place on Mondays and is being offered in both face-to-face and virtual settings. This is an excellent example of why it's important for us to ensure that our staff have time on Mondays for professional learning, in addition to collaborative planning time and having the flexibility of being able to provide asynchronous or even synchronous small group learning opportunities for our students. Now, we've tested and plan to use our existing classroom technology in classrooms to include laptops that have web cameras built in, as well as interactive whiteboards to support concurrent teaching. Our students at home can connect with the class using either Google Meet or Zoom, and then the teacher's screen can be shared through Google Meet or Zoom, and students at home are able to see the teacher's screen on their devices, while the students in the classroom are able to see the teacher's screen on the interactive whiteboard. Our school-based instructional technology specialists are providing the training with support from central support staff serving sometimes as test students. And then the purpose and goal of that model is to model what it will actually look like when having students in a face-to-face and virtual environment at the same time. And of course, our instructional technology staff stand ready to support our teachers as well as administrators, and we continually encourage them to reach out to our ITSs as well as their building administrators with questions or if they need professional learning support. We also started to provide instructional technology support after school hours. So for the next few weeks, our instructional technology specialists are standing by from 6:30 p.m. to 8:15 p.m. Mondays through Thursdays through the VBCPS chat feature that's located on our website. And anybody that wants to can go to the vbcps.com and look for the chat icon that's located on the bottom right-hand corner. And now I'll turn the rest of the presentation, the next part of the presentation, over to Mr. Den.
Thank you.
Good afternoon again. Thank you, Dr. Rogers. So I'd like to start by talking just a little bit about that new piece of technology that we rolled out with regards to the chat feature that allows us to do real-time chat with individuals in our community and provide them support after hours. So recognizing that our community still has many questions about instruction this year, we're experimenting with some real-time chat and bot technology, B-O-T technology, that we added onto the VB Schools website. You may have run across this in your travels on the internet. This is where you may go to Verizon or to another vendor, and they have that option to chat with a real-time with an individual on the back end with regards to whatever questions that you might have. It allows our community to interface in a live chat format with our great team of ITSs and get instructional support. During the hours that live chat isn't available, a bot will attempt to answer questions automatically. Since its implementation last week, the bot has answered what would have been equivalent to over 11 hours of phone calls already. We urge families to visit vbschools.com and give it a try. We understand that families are experiencing stress in many forms during this pandemic. Another way that we're working to meet the changing needs of our community is expanding the hours of our Customer Support Center, or Technology Help Desk, to 7 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Mondays through Thursdays, and 7 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. on Fridays. We hope that families will take advantage of this resource to resolve issues with their school-issued computers.
Excuse me, can you
Yes, ma'am.
repeat those times? That's a frequent question we get.
Sure, absolutely. It is 7 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Monday through Thursdays, 7 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. on Fridays.
Thank you.
Absolutely. You may be surprised to learn that summer is the busiest time of year for the Department of Technology. With fewer students and staff that may be impacted, summer is when we implement our biggest projects and most significant system changes. Because of COVID-19, this summer was exceptionally busy. What did everyone turn to and depend on to connect and collaborate even though we were quarantined? Technology. And we knew that technology would be integral to success in virtual instruction. Tonight, I'll highlight just a few of the many projects we completed and then some of the projects that we're still working on. Prior to the pandemic, VBCPS, as was discussed in the presentation earlier, was a one-to-one division for first grade through 12th grade. This summer, we extended the one-to-one program to pre-kindergarten and kindergarten. To date, we've distributed 500 cell hotspots for those who needed internet support as they asked for it in the end of school in March, at the closure of school in March. We implemented ClassLink, a new application portal to make it easier for students and parents to find and access instructional resources and applications. We made Zoom available to all students and staff. Teachers and students have already completed, since the beginning of school, they have already completed over 1.3 million hours or 190,000 school days of Zoom meetings. We replaced 11,000 Chromebooks as part of our annual device replacement program. Next, I'll highlight some of the projects that we still have in flight for the remainder of this calendar year. We'll strategically install 295 new interactive panels in classrooms to facilitate simultaneous face-to-face and virtual instruction. We will distribute an additional 500 hotspots to those who indicated that they need internet support on this year's enrollment form. We will distribute almost 4,700 new instructional laptops to facilitate live streaming from classrooms. Finally, we are working with school principals to implement Wi-Fi in outdoor areas so that teachers and students can continue learning outside when the weather permits. This investment will also allow for further outdoor instructional opportunities after COVID. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, sir. And welcome, Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Den. For today, I'm going to focus on our HVAC efforts. And as background, since March, we've been working to ensure that our HVAC systems are functioning as designed. We reference CDC recommendations and continue to consult with local HVAC professionals as we continue this work. The goal is to ensure that ventilation in our buildings is as good as it can be. Before sharing our efforts, I want to address recent questions about air quality monitoring. So that's a term that we use when looking at specific environmental hazards that have potential being disturbed when conducting maintenance work or space improvement within our building structures. Another example, we may conduct air quality investigations if there was a report about mold in one of our rooms. In that example, the air quality investigation may involve an air sampling test, and that air sampling test would specifically look for the amount of mold measured indoors and compare it to the amount measured outdoors, and that's clearly what's not intended by the question. So, that all being said, we will continue to leverage CDC recommendations to guide our effort, ensuring that we maintain the best level of ventilation and circulation that can be provided by our HVAC systems. One of those efforts is minimizing our setback temperatures. Pre-COVID, when our buildings were unoccupied or minimally occupied, setback temperatures were set relatively quickly to save energy. Moving forward, our HVAC systems will operate on normal temperature settings for periods of time when the building isn't occupied. Specifically, buildings will operate at their intended temperature settings for a minimum of 2 hours before the start of the school day and for 2 hours after scheduled programming. We've also provided guidance to schools for when to consider opening windows to increase ventilation. As you have likely heard, some of our windows are permanently secured. That is for safety reasons, and it is a better balance of risk to keep those windows closed. At previous updates, I've also mentioned preventative maintenance. HVAC preventative maintenance is like taking your car in for routine servicing. It ensures that systems are running optimally and minimizes the likelihood of an unexpected breakdown. So what does that mean specifically? When we perform preventative maintenance, our craftsmen conduct a detailed assessment of how each system is performing and make corrections as required. Corrections can include replacing worn belts. Craftsmen also verify fan operation, like in the top center picture. So in that top center picture, you can see that there are 4 fans that are lined up next to each other. You can imagine that in normal operation, 1 or 2 of those fans can not be operable, but you're still going to get airflow. But by doing the detailed work that the craftsman did there, we can ensure that the fans are running optimally and we're getting the optimum airflow out of the system. It's also a good time to clean and verify that all components are functioning properly. Part of that process is cleaning coils. This has many benefits, all of which ensure reliable operation and that systems are delivering airflow as designed. Finally, we ensure that our filters are replaced. All of this work has been continuing since March with a focus on return to face-to-face instruction. Much of this work is done by our craftsmen in the background, as it should be. And our craftsmen do this while also being responsive to the day-to-day needs of the division. Another question that's come up recently referenced new rules on signage in common areas. The Virginia Safety and Health Codes Board approved an emergency temporary standard on July 15th. This required posting updated occupancy signage in specific common areas. All required maximum occupancy signs have been posted, and here you can see a couple of examples. We have a cafeteria example on the left and a lounge example on the right. With that, I will turn it over to Dr. Robertson to discuss some school leadership items.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman, and welcome, Dr. Robertson.
Hitting cleanup again. I don't know how I keep drawing that card. Before I get to an update on where we are from our last meeting and share next steps, I want to take a moment to share how we are addressing some of our ongoing dilemmas. As new families enroll, please know the vast majority of our face-to-face classes are filled with existing students, which means that if a parent requests face-to-face, they may not get it if there's not a seat available. In addition, I'm aware of a couple of scenarios where a teacher has a documented medical condition that requires him or her to teach virtually, which would mean any student assigned to that class would receive their instruction virtually. Any student in option 1 in that scenario would receive their instruction from the classroom with another staff member, not a teacher, serving as a class monitor. We had 699 staff submit a request to teach virtually, and of those we were able to accommodate 338 teachers with a heavy emphasis on approving those with documented medical conditions. Any teacher who did not get their preference were placed in a face-to-face position. The USDA is allowing the school division to return to the summer feeding model at all of our schools. This means that all children, regardless of individual eligibility, can receive breakfast and lunch meals free. All that is needed is a head count, which will allow students to quickly pick up a meal and go. Students will be able to pick up meals from the cafeteria or another area designated by the school's administration. One of the challenges is how to feed students safely, and we've been brainstorming solutions. So as an example, a group of elementary principals met with Mr. Freeman and his team to problem solve how to safely feed students, whether in the cafeteria or the classroom. These solutions will be shared with all principals at the upcoming league meeting on Wednesday, so that principals can finalize their feeding plans to ensure proper social distancing while students are eating breakfast or lunch in the classroom or the cafeteria. Middle school and high school principals are doing the same, but they have fewer students initially to plan for, with only 1 grade level returning. Please note, all plans will include reasonable social distancing mitigations, including the use of plexiglass if needed. All right. Sorry about the clicking. There have been some questions as to whether teachers will receive their 30-minute duty-free lunch. As in years past, principals develop schedules that provide all teachers a duty-free lunch. This year is no different. Schools will continue to use the cafeteria monitors and assistants to cover lunches, and the assistants will receive their duty-free lunch as well. As stated previously, Option 1 Pre-K2 students will return to school on September 29th for in-person learning. Daily schedules have been modified as necessary to 1. Provide safety throughout the day, 2. Meet the minute requirements of the Virginia Department of Education, and 3. Include face-to-face and virtual core and non-core instructional minutes. In a September 17, 2020 memo, principals were provided suggestions from the Department of Teaching and Learning on elementary non-instructional core minutes to assist in developing schedules for art, music, and PE. In addition to core instruction, students will receive physical education 2 to 3 times per week with the PE teacher. Recess will be daily. It's suggested that art and music is taught every other week. And please note that the requirement for physical activity in the standards of accreditation is 100 minutes weekly. These minutes may be met through a combination of physical education and recess. And there are no required minutes for art and music. Effective virtual instruction requires a wide variety of synchronous and asynchronous learning, including live time with the instructor, independent and guided practice. Virtual schedules have also been created for PE, art, music, and recess. As you know, last week, Dr. Kelly Hedrick, principal at Old Donation School, shared a letter with her parents announcing that due to staffing and space limitations, she would not be able to meet all the family's requests to receive face-to-face assignments. It's important for anyone listening to know that Dr. Hedrick has been working on a solution since mid-August. She never intended to blindside anyone and was simply exercising the gift of time, hoping she could secure a better solution before sharing with her parents. Over the last week, I've been working with Dr. Hedrick and Dr. Rogers to take another look at her challenges to determine other solutions. As with every challenge in this current environment, this work takes time. And I'm happy to say that we identified the solution that will allow for all families who chose face-to-face in grades 2 through 6 to get their choice. The school division granted Dr. Hedrick 4 new teacher allocations out of the 7 FTEs provided to me by Farrell Hunsaker to place one more class at grades 2, 3, 4, and 5. In addition, Dr. Rogers has committed to providing an additional GRT to support the new staff and students for this year. At the middle school level, Dr. Hedrick's entire grade 6 middle school teaching team, including elected teachers, have agreed to teach students in a mixed setting simultaneously, which allows her to bring all 3 grade 6 teams back and serve both groups. In addition, Dr. Hedrick will be using other classrooms on the middle side of ODS to house some larger elementary school classes, again to help meet the choices of Option 1 families. Throughout, the most important goal Dr. Hedrick had was to bring back as many students and staff as possible safely and to keep all students, all ODS students in the ODS curriculum with an ODS teachers. This afternoon, grade 2 families got a letter from Dr. Hedrick letting them know this information. She's working on grades 3 through 5 tomorrow, and we'll send a similar letter to those families, and grade 6 on Thursday. As I noted on September 17th, we were prepared and today welcome back select groups of students with disabilities in most of our schools. In addition, all student and teacher assignments were completed for students in grades pre-K through 2, and we're ready to welcome these students back in person learning on Tuesday, September 29th. We're in the final stages and we'll be prepared to welcome back students in grades 3 through 5 on Tuesday, October 6th, as well as students in grades 6 and 9 on Thursday, October 8th. Recall this date, October 8th, corresponds to the beginning of the second marking period in those grades. As I mentioned last Thursday, our elementary school principals have worked together to cover all of our elementary school students, either in the home or a companion school. Therefore, we will not operate a central VLC, which to me is great news, as this meets our goal to keep as many students and staff as possible connected to their home school. Due to the student schedule complexities, we will need a small number of classes at both the high school and middle school level, and we're currently working on finalizing this plan by the end of the week, so we are going to be operating a secondary central VLC. As I noted last Thursday, we continue to work with the Department of Human Resources to find teachers to fill existing vacancies. What makes this work more difficult this year is that all school divisions across Virginia and the country are scrambling to fill vacancies. The good news is that all classrooms have either a teacher, a long-term sub, or potentially a central support staff in place to serve our students. And yes, I did say central support staff, as we are looking at all available staffing options to meet the needs of our students at the secondary level. In the last 2 board meetings, I've discussed that many teachers have agreed to a stipend to keep all students when we transition to in-person learning. This means they will be providing daily instruction within the scheduled class time to students who are in person and remotely using the technology tools we have provided to support synchronous instruction. As a result, we've had fewer instances where student course needs require other solutions. When this happens, our first solution at the secondary level is to offer existing teachers who are interested in taking an additional class to do so and receive a $5,600 extra block allowance. This is not available at the elementary school, given teachers teach an entire grade level team. This has been really popular at the middle school level, but we do have teachers selecting this as well at the high school level. Our second solution is to use the central VLC. When we can identify at least 25 students and a teacher, we are creating a central VLC class. However, we do have some instances where we are not getting at least 25 students across all of our middle schools or all of our high schools. And in this case, without the teacher agreeing to keep their assigned students, these students' course needs cannot be met. In these cases, we will direct principals to meet with these teachers to explain the challenge, that no other solution exists, that they will be required to keep their students from both virtual and in person, and for doing so, they will receive a stipend. To ensure all teachers are equipped to succeed in this teaching environment, the Departments of School Leadership, Teaching and Learning, and the Department of Technology have created a professional learning series focused on how to leverage existing technology combined with best practices in pedagogy. This series began yesterday and will continue on Mondays for the next several weeks. Staff will have multiple opportunities to engage with their colleagues and central support staff to help them succeed. Next week, school counselors will be contacting parents and students. That will have a schedule change on October the 8th. School administrators will be doing the same with any teachers who may have a schedule change, although those will be very rare. Finally, I think it's important for everyone to know that Dr. Spence has made his expectations clear to his leadership team, and that is we are all in this thing together. Our success is based on the team, and winners make sacrifices for the good of the many. I've directed my team and the principals to prepare their assistant principals, their student activities coordinators, their school improvement specialists at the secondary level, and their support staff, security assistants, specialists at all levels to be prepared to support a teacher or students by covering a class as part of their assigned duties. In short, we will not ask teachers to do what we will not do first. And Dossal is not alone in this commitment to supporting schools. The Department of Teaching and Learning has provided support by reassigning some staff to fill teaching vacancies until such time as we can secure a teacher. And at this time, I think we're done.
Well, thank you. So I'll first start with Madam Clerk. Do we have any raised hands with our Zoom participants?
No.
Not at this time, okay. So we will start with Mrs. Melnick.
Thank you. My first 2 questions are for Mr. Din. And as you're approaching the podium, the first one is, do we have plans to sync Schoology and Synergy this year? I think that was happening somewhere on a trial basis.
That is actually something that we're looking into.
Okay.
The team has been experimenting with it, and so yes, we are looking into that. I can't say definitively that we will end up doing it or not, but it's something that we're looking into.
Okay, might make life a little easier for people, but, okay, thank you for that. And the other is Zoom versus Google Meet. So some schools do still use Google Meet. So are breakout rooms not available in Google Meet?
So I believe that they are. However, I'm going to go ahead and ask for
Like three
Dr.
people
Shoebridge,
jumped-
would you like, or doesn't matter. I know you're much more intimate with that.
Welcome.
Hi, everybody. How are you today? So we are in the process of securing Google Enterprise. Google Enterprise will give us many more features in Google Meet, like the breakout rooms.
Okay,
The opportunity for that part to be recorded, blurred backgrounds. There's more things that'll come with the Google Enterprise Edition that we're in the process of securing.
okay. Do you have like a time frame by any chance, any?
So I signed off on BuySpeed and then it goes off. So that's, I mean, it's in the chain. It's
Okay.
in the chain. We need it by the September 30th is our goal because there's a discount that's involved. So hopefully we'll have that ready to roll out. Teachers are still using it. It's still available for them now. Just some of those additional features aren't part of it. But we do
Okay.
have teachers in schools that are using Google Meet currently.
Okay. And Dr. Robertson, your staffing update, are you updating the memo we received from HR?
No.
So we still are down 68, 70 teachers?
John Muir can address that.
Well, thank you, Dr. Robertson. The short answer, I checked just before I came in here,
Thank
about
you.
64. It's changing like as I
Every-
stand here in front of you. But since I'm in front of you, I'm going to share a little bit more with that letter I sent out to you, just to give you a sense of what we're dealing with. So in that memo, said that since August 15th, we had 70 new teacher resignations. Okay, now from August 15th to last Friday, when I pulled that data together, and again, that keeps changing. 70 new teacher vacancies from then until last Friday. Now, I'm not going to tell you to guess this. I'm going to tell you, I want to say guess how many teachers we hired in that same time frame, but don't. I'm going to tell you. We hired 130 teachers in the same time frame, from August 15th to last Friday. And I checked today, we have 64 teacher vacancies. It's a moving target. People are some are accepting positions and then declining them. So we're trying to, ideally, hopefully, we need to kind of calm the waters, get people back working with kids, and hopefully things will settle down. But yes.
Are you expecting some, like, those odd retirement dates to kind of, like
That's-
October 1st?
Yeah, there's typically throughout the year, the majority of retirees come at the end of the school year, primarily for teachers too. They usually start their careers in September. And so to get their 30 or 35 or 40 years in, it'll be at the end of June. But we do anticipate some. But the numbers that we're seeing now, I think we believe are related to the uncertainty of times and all the other stressors that are out there. And also that marketing campaign that we're doing nationally and locally, you'll start seeing some for bus drivers and custodians. So I keep saying to everybody, we're all recruiters, and we do it one at a time. If you have any leads, please send them our way.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Anderson and then Mrs. Manning.
Madam Chair, please add Ms. Weems to the queue.
Done. Thank you.
Okay, first, did I hear correctly when you said, when Dr. Robertson said there was free breakfast and lunch for all or all students? All elementary students or all students?
Yeah, that's, USDA has extended that through the end of December? Through the
Okay.
calendar year.
All right, thank you. And my next question has to do with specialists, especially now, I'm pretty much talking about elementary right now, okay? Specialists. You indicated that we are going to have specialists. Students will have music, art, and PE.
Correct.
Okay, so my question is, and this is from a teacher who wasn't quite sure, will the students go to the specialist or will the specialist come to them?
So I'm gonna ask Ms. Lewis to come in here and
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
Hi. It depends. Basically, if the gym or the art room is large enough to practice the mitigation strategies of distancing 3 feet or 6 feet apart, they can go to the art room or the gym. However, but they will stay in their cohort. They will not be mixed. However, if the art room is not large enough to practice that distancing, the art teacher will come to the classroom. So it just depends on the school and the size of the school and the configuration of the rooms.
Okay, don't go anywhere.
Sure.
Okay, so the next question has to do with materials for small group instruction, especially like manipulatives. Teachers are very worried and concerned of how are they going to handle that, how are they going to sterilize those, et cetera.
Exactly.
Could you
We've
talk
heard-
about that a little bit?
We've heard some of those same questions as well. And health mitigations are a top priority. And we are working with Health Services, Mary Shaw, to provide us guidelines on how we need to do these things. As a matter of fact, Mary Shaw is attending our league meeting tomorrow morning, and she's going to share with principals and provide them some guidance on how we should handle those types of things.
So will this be like throughout the system, or will every principal come up with their own idea? Because I think that's the biggest thing
Mary
that's going
Shaw
on.
is going to provide us some guidance on that, and we're going to stress that principals adhere to her guidelines.
Okay, and it's the same with small group instruction as well?
Well, we're going to have to reimagine small group instruction
Yeah.
because you know that we cannot get 4 to 5 kids at a kidney table as in the past. So we're going to be providing some direction on how small group instruction can continue while kids are still sitting at their desk, and maybe those desks, you know, they're cohorted. If you're level 48, you're cohorted with a group of 48 students, and the teacher would do the movement versus the kids.
Okay. And the last question I have for now, because I don't want to take up all the time, but bathrooms. I know that some primary classrooms have their own restrooms, you know, right in their room, part of their, you know, their little room there. Are students going to be allowed to use those, or will they all have to, like, you know, like the whole class go down and for restroom time or whatever? How will that be? And if they go down the hall to the restroom, are they supposed to be able to go by themselves? I mean, how is that going to work? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I can to the best of my ability. They will be allowed to use the bathrooms in the classroom. What we're going to ask principals and teachers to do is have the kids wash their hands before they go into the bathroom, and then again wash their hands when they come out. And that way, you know, we can eliminate some of the possible germs that will be on the handles and the doorknobs and the faucets. We're asking principals to develop bathroom breaks, plan for a bathroom break where we don't have several groups in the hallway at the same time, and they will allow kids to go in, maybe 1 or 2 kids at a time. So it will be monitored. Traditionally in an elementary school anyway, you know, kids have a bathroom break, they go with their teacher and they're monitored.
Thank you. I'll relinquish and let somebody else ask some questions now.
Thank you, Mrs. Manning, and then Mrs. Weems.
Okay, I have a bunch also, so I'll ask a few for right now. So Dr. Robertson, you addressed partially one of the questions that I've had for a while. My question was, how many licensed teachers do we have that are not currently classroom teachers? But you did say that we're going to be reassigning all available staff. Is that kind of what you're talking about? Those, say, instructional coaches who are licensed teachers but aren't necessarily teaching a classroom. Is that who you're referencing?
Yeah, so I don't know the number of how many provisional teachers we have. I do know that what we're going to, where we don't have a teacher or a long-term sub, or we've got a singleton class, we're going to be using everybody who's available. For example, if I'm a math specialist, and their math specialists are probably like, really? Yes, math specialist, that's you. If I have a math specialist assigned to a high school, so to speak, and that high school has an Algebra 1 class, for example, that doesn't have a staff member, that math specialist is going to teach that Algebra 1 class.
Okay, so the 60-plus vacancies that we have right now, that's not including the staff that we have available who are licensed teachers who can fill those spots, correct?
Without seeing the exact matching between the vacancies versus how many people we have, I mean, you could have, you need a bunch of French
I can help
teachers.
you real quick.
Okay.
The 64, whatever I said earlier, does include some non-classroom teachers, but the majority, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so that
Some
doesn't
of them
include
are
all of the
resource-
teachers, the licensed teachers that we have filling other roles, that doesn't include them.
When I give you the vacancy number, that includes all instructional. The majority are classroom teachers, but some of those, maybe 10 or 12, might be resource.
Right, but
Like-
what I'm saying is we have some staff that we can rely on to fill those positions if needed, correct?
Well, and that's what Dr. Roberts was saying.
Right.
Yes, reading specialists, math coaches, et cetera.
Okay.
I mean, they're.
Because that's
they're
great,
trying
that's
to
great
utilize
news that
every
we have,
human being
that's
they
great
can.
news that we have
Yeah.
that, there. And then you, Dr. Robertson, you also mentioned the extra stipend for teachers that are teaching both in person and virtual. You said 5,600, is that per term, per year? What?
So the 5,600 is an extra block supplement or an extra block allowance that we've had in place for a number of years. And that's for, in a normal AB schedule, it's for the year. But in a 4x4, it's for the term, which is the first semester.
So any
That's-
teacher that is teaching both in person and virtual
No,
students?
that's, so two different things. So I'm gonna give you an
Okay.
example. So, it's very popular at middle school because middle school has a zero bell.
Right,
So, technically a teacher, very popular with PE as well. They can teach PE at a zero bell, pick up an extra class. So now they have an extra class beyond the normal day. They get $5,600 to teach that extra class at a zero bell. The stipend is for when we have teachers with students in a mixed setting. They have students that are going to be physically in their classroom and online at the same time. They will receive a stipend that was developed based upon a budget provided to me by Farrell out of CARES Act funding.
okay, and how much is that stipend?
So it's a graduated scale. The maximum you could get if we started September 8th and went for the first semester was $450 per class. So if you have one class in that situation, and we were in school the entire time, $450. Every 3 weeks it graduates down $75. So the first weeks 16 through 18, if you did 16 to 18 weeks, $450. If you did 13 to 15 weeks, it's $375. If you do,
Okay.
so we graduated all the way down to the out the 18 weeks.
Right. I'm hearing that that's not a whole lot. I mean, and to me, that's not a lot. I mean, I would like for the board to consider finding some extra money so that we can pay our teachers who are going above and beyond. I know that we have some reversion money that city council indicated, I believe, to Ms. Rye, that I believe it was 7 million that was put back in the CIP, that if we needed it for our general fund, all we had to do was ask city council. So I think there is funding there. I think that this is a dire need, that I would like to ask the board to consider if we could find some extra funding for our teachers, for these extra stipends for teaching both in person and virtual. So that was, I was misunderstanding what the stipend was that you were talking about, but that's what I wanted to bring up. And then I'll just ask you one more question for now, and then I'll get back in the queue. I did get an email today from a principal about SATs, but it's not showing any additional SAT being added for October. Has that not been worked out?
So, Dr. Rogers, I'm not aware if we were able to work that out to offer at a particular school. I do know we're offering October.
Third.
Well, October 3rd is the general one at 4 schools, and then it's November 5th or 6th for 4 schools in December. But the-
Okay, so is it more schools? Are we,
we have four testing sites in Virginia Beach.
okay.
And each testing site will be offering the SAT and the first weekend in October, first weekend in November, and first weekend. in
How
December.
many students are each of those sites able to accommodate? Do you know?
Those sites are submitting safety plans to Mr. Freeman's office, and so I have not seen those safety plans
Okay,
yet.
I'm just very concerned about this. I'm getting phone calls left and right of parents who are traveling to North Carolina, South Carolina, out of state to be able to get SATs for their kids.
Yeah.
And I really feel like that's an immediate need that we need to address.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Weems.
Thank you so much. I no longer take it for granted that when I raise my hand, I will be allowed to speak, so I totally appreciate this opportunity. I've got many questions as well. I'll start off with a couple, and then if you would please put me back in the queue, I would appreciate that. With technology, I've heard this from several teachers. For the teachers who will be teaching virtually for the whole first semester, if they're using their Chromebook or perhaps an older computer, they cannot see their entire class at the same time. And we all know that that's true with Zoom. Is there any way that we can buy extra monitors for teachers so that they can see all their kiddos at one time? That's my first question.
Sure. Hi there, Mrs. Weems. This is David Dinn. So the limitation that teachers are experiencing with regards to how many individuals they can see at one time on Zoom is not based off of the size of the monitor. It is based off of the CPU that is in the laptop. The new instructional devices that we are going to be distributing to schools should help with that situation and should allow them to be able to get to the maximum 49 individuals that Zoom allows in a video conference call.
Okay, and when will those be available?
The order has been put in based off of the information that we have from the vendor at this time. We are told that they are approximately 4 to 6 weeks out right now.
No, I was hoping that would be sooner because I think that would be, for us that work at home that have multiple monitors, I know how helpful that is. So I'm glad they're coming. I just wish that it would have been a little bit sooner for all those teachers. Okay, well, great. Thank you. Also, I guess this is also a screen time issue for, and I asked this a few weeks ago, I believe, excuse me, and I still get comments from parents. If your child, especially if your child has learning differences and do not qualify for that level of 50% or the other categories that are face-to-face, and your child is not successful in learning via computer and is frustrated and cannot access the information or give back the information via a Chromebook, can you get paper and pencil? And I was told yes. And so can you just help me understand how that is possible, how that happens? Because some parents have said that they've contacted the school because I've directed them back to the school and they said paper, pencil resources were not available. So can some of these parents or kids get paper and pencil for some of their assignments?
So good afternoon, Mrs. Wings. This is Kip Rogers. So I would still recommend families work very closely with their case managers as well as their teachers, as well as with the school to determine the best instructional method for those individual students. That is absolutely the best way for them to approach that. I know we did it for the emergency learning plan. We also did it when we transitioned into the summer for those students who were to work better in using other methods than the digital methods that they were able to work with those individual families. Now, we can't do that carte blanche because that's just not how we're approaching teaching and learning. However, we do recognize and understand that we do have students with disabilities who have specialized situations, and they are highly encouraged to work very closely with their school buildings to resolve those issues.
Okay, Okay, thank you, and I will, encourage them to continue to do so, and if they can't get any satisfaction, I will send them on to you. So, and then also with our special education population, I know the groups that started back, to school today, our CSEP, our, AFA, our FAF, the STEP, and those that, qualified with the 50% level of special education instruction. So the other students that maybe just barely missed that mark, and then these would mainly be our students perhaps in inclusion classes, are they on the same re-entry as everybody else, or are we going to try to get them in sooner?
Those who not qualify for the 50% benchmark that we've established would return back to school with their respective grade levels.
Okay, is there any thought or could we look at that? Because I've gotten many phone calls and I've run into people on the soccer fields and at grocery stores. And I know my family, one years and years ago would be in this situation where they don't receive 50%, but they're in inclusion and they really need to facilitate in-person learning. They have greater challenges than a person in just general ed. Is there any way that we can look at bringing them in earlier if they receive 40% or 30% or some sort of staggered? Because I really feel that these kids are gonna perhaps regress, not just, it's great to even try to maintain. I mean, we need to be excelling, but to maintain, but for folks with special education challenges, we just don't want them to regress. And I think there's a lot on the borderline here that I just fear that if we wait till just the regular gen ed student, we're not doing we're not giving them the right kind of service. So would there be any way that we could look at those different percentages or look at the different needs to try to get them in physically face to face earlier? Of course, if their family chose that option.
Sure. So the team worked very closely with the Department of Special Education, OPEC, to identify the best way in which to serve students who need it most. And it becomes really an issue of staffing as well as with scheduling. And I'm not sure if Dr. Myers-Dobb is on the Zoom call or not. I think she is, and she can expand a little bit more on that. But the way in which we've designed the schedule to fit the needs of those students who require the greatest level of support is about where we can, we're pushing it, trying to do all that we can for those students to be able to come in the face-to-face venue and still meet the needs of those students who have selected option 2. So Dr. Myers-Dobb, are you online? Crickets. So, but yeah, that would be near impossible for us to accommodate all of the students based on existing staffing as well as.
Well, I'm not talking about all of the special education students, because obviously we have, I don't know, 8,000 or 9,000, 10, something like that. I'm just talking about the level, that next level is what I'm talking about. That receive tons of specialized instruction in an inclusion general ed class.
Right.
Dr. Rogers, I'm on.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I had to make me be able to speak, allow me to speak. Ms. Weems, so one of the things that we talked about, why we looked at students with 50% or more in the special education setting, because those are the students that spend the most time in the self-contained setting. Those students that spend less are in the general education setting with their general education peers. So if we started to transition them in prior to their general education peers, they wouldn't be with their peer group. So that was one of the things that we looked at with that 50% or more, because that is level 2. So we looked at a definition of level 2, and those are our students that have those more intensive support needs in a self-contained setting.
Right. Yeah, I know. That is basically your self-contained. I was just looking at the other students, like you said, that still need significant in-person instruction. Okay, well, thank you. I will, can you put me back in the queue, please, Mrs. Rye? I've got other questions, but I'll let other folks go. Thank you.
because we do need to do a time check. We have our immersion to decide how much of this to defer until our formal meeting. But we'll get through these next few, and maybe now's a good time to ask Dr. Bergen, is there an estimate, or who would know what the estimated time frame is? Because I know we have staff waiting for the immersion agenda item, the world language. I spotted some in the hall. All right. So we'll push another 10 minutes of
20 minutes.
questions then.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Owens?
Great, thank you. I have a couple questions, as always. The first one is in regards to transportation. I wanted to understand, I know that when we were told about the percentage of families who did not respond to the option 1, option 2 preference, they were automatically placed in option 1. I'm wondering if those same families responded to bus reservations, and if they did not, were they automatically set up for bus service for that automatic option 1 piece?
In accordance with all of the information that we put out, in order to receive transportation, you must sign up for transportation. So if a family did not sign up for transportation, they are not scheduled to receive it.
Do we know what percentage of students were put in option 1 that did not select it but not given transportation for that non-selection?
So the question is, how many basically didn't put anything in, and they were put in option 1? 8%.
Wow, thank you for having the percent off hand. So about 8% of those students. And do we have any plans for what we can do to try and service those students? Are these students predominantly are at-risk students who didn't respond in the first place and now are being placed for in-person education without a way to get to school?
So are you receiving feedback from anybody that needs transportation?
Well, I'm just hearing that we have students placed in person and they don't have the reservations. I don't know, I'm not hearing that from the families. I'm hearing it from guidance concerns that we have these students that are placed to get in-person learning, but they didn't choose it because their family was non-responsive. And now they are not going to have a bus service set up, and that these may be families that are more vulnerable.
So if there's a challenge, we just need to understand what the specific challenge is. If somebody has a concern that they didn't sign up and they want to be able to have that discussion, just have them call.
So we'll find out kind of on the first, as things get rolling, when those students try and get to school.
We're not being overwhelmed by feedback at this point.
Okay.
With information for those that needed accommodation because they didn't sign up. So we're happy to take it, but I'm not hearing this being a broad concern at this point.
Okay. My next question is about the specialist in elementary school. With the art and music situation, I know we are trying to cohort as much as possible to reduce the need for quarantine and the spreading. If we have a situation, an unfortunate situation where we have a specialist, art or music teacher test positive for COVID, is that pretty much going to shut the school because we've had them in every class?
That is not a question I can answer.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, so, anytime we get a case, we are working with the Virginia Department of Health and our own health services office, and every case will come through on an individual basis to work with, again, the Virginia Department of Health and determine what exactly we need to do. So I would hesitate to give you a definitive answer because we don't know. It depends on what the level of risk is.
Okay, do we have like a standard where if a third grade teacher tests positive, that we know the standard in the district is that classroom or the people who sit within this many feet of that teacher during the day, or is it just a case by case across the?
It's going to be a case by case because it depends on the risk of exposure and all those other factors. How long someone was exposed, 15 minutes or less, did they have a mask on? we'll full transparency with the Virginia Department of Health, and Virginia Beach Department of Health, and they'll give us some recommendations, and then we'll proceed accordingly. We'll do it quickly.
Okay. Do we have anything in place where we're able to have people have access to knowing, like logging on and seeing what schools have had positive cases? That way, if they were not notified for whatever reason, that they're able to look and be notified rather than wait for the notification.
We do not have that in place.
Can we get it? I mean, even if it's just on our regular websites, when we have a positive case in a school, that there's a link on that website, a COVID link for that school, where we can look and see.
So we're discussing it as a team. We've discussed it for the second time on this past Monday. I will share with you the Department of School Leadership's perspective. My team was split down the middle.
Okay.
On whether to share it by building and numbers because of worrying about any biases that people could draw conclusions from based upon the data. Would there be any possible way for personally identifiable information to be shared or guessed? So we were split down the middle. We're just part of the decision. I asked my team to think more about it over the next couple of days. We're going to revisit it. So it is being discussed.
Okay. Does the board have any input in whether the numbers are available that way?
I would think that the board would definitely have some input.
I mean, I don't know if that's a chairman. Okay. Okay.
So if I can just address in general, this is an evolving situation for all of us. We're all learning as we go. We haven't had students in school since March. Here's some things that do happen and will happen, and you can be assured are happening. If there's a positive case, the Virginia Department of Health contacts Mary Shaw. She is in constant communication with the Virginia Department of Health, and they are the contact tracing authority. They will notify us, work with us, who needs to be directly notified because they are considered a higher risk of exposure. Anyone who works in a building where there has been an exposure receives that information. You've seen those notices, so every parent in that school is notified, every staff member in that school is notified there was a positive case of COVID in this community. Your question, I believe, was, what if someone was in the building and they weren't on that distribution list? How would
Sure,
they
like
know?
all of our substitute teachers, our
Yeah.
MFLACs, our regular
I do.
people who come in.
Yeah, and we've discussed that as a senior staff. That is a possibility. So we rely on the people who work in that building to think, oh, that was last Wednesday, who wouldn't have gotten this notice? I gave you all notice as a board of a communication that went to the people who work in this building, but you weren't on that distribution list. And I thought, that was a day you were here, so we noticed you.
Right.
It
It
would
would have
work
been
that-
nice for us to notice ourselves, though, and just check.
Say again?
And it would be helpful for people to be able to not worry about if they were noticed when they were in or not. Our substitutes, who I assume we're going to be relying on a lot, are going to be in multiple different schools, unless we're confining our substitutes so you can only substitute in these two schools.
But I do understand your question. And so we know who was in a building on a day who was substituting in that building, and we can, and we will build in measures to make sure that through human resources and through docile, anyone that we know is in that building will have been included in the notice. Your question of should we have a public forward-facing website is something that we are actively discussing as senior staff. There are pros and cons to that. We've not made a decision whether we will or will not do that. We will certainly rely on the expertise and guidance of Mary Shaw in the Office of Health Services and on the Virginia Beach Department of Health, consistency in the region, advice from the Virginia Department of Health. We're weighing all of that information now.
Okay, and I'm going to ask Mrs. Riggs, it is 5:10, but I know you haven't had a chance, so if you want to sneak in one question now and save others for formal meeting?
I have several, but, I have several, I had my hand up, but anyway, one of them was the same thing that Jessica was asking, and I had asked about that a while back with the dashboard. So, I know that there was a something going in the General Assembly about that, positive cases by school. I know the pilot reported that as a mandate, a bill to mandate this had already passed. Is that true? Do y'all know about that bill?
I have no information.
Okay.
Ms. Linnaeus, do you know anything about that? No.
Okay, all right, but there was a bill. There was one put up for that.
I'll check on it in between.
Okay, all right, I just have one more, and this is for Dr. Robertson. Did you say when you were doing your report, because there was so much you were telling us, that if a teacher had chosen to be virtual and they really needed them to be face-to-face, they had to change? Is that what you said to us?
So, ask me one more time.
Did you say that if a teacher had chosen their option to be virtual
Yep.
and they really needed them to be face-to-face, that they had to do what they told them that they had to change?
Yeah, I didn't say that, but let me say this.
Okay.
If let me give you an example. Let's say that I am the only. I don't want to pick on French again. Let's pick on Chinese. I'm the only Chinese teacher at school A, and I have 3 levels of Chinese, and half of the kids have chosen to come back face to face in Chinese, and the other half want to go virtual in Chinese. And I, as the teacher, prefer to teach virtual. If I've submitted documentation and that health documentation places me in a category that's significantly at risk, we're going to honor that request. That teacher will stay virtual. The kids that were in that class face-to-face will be in that class. And we'll put a substitute, not a substitute, we'll put a monitor in there. And that monitor could be an assistant principal, it could be a student activities coordinator, it could be a SIS, it could be a security assistant, it won't be a teacher, to monitor that class, and the teacher would deliver all of their instruction virtually. If the teacher said, I want to go virtual, but didn't submit the documentation, or the documentation did not meet the threshold determined by employee relations that it was a significant health risk, that teacher will be told they need to teach face-to-face.
Okay.
So why don't we hold that thought, and Mrs. Riggs, we'll have you first in the queue for the formal
you.
meeting. Is that fair?
As it's,
Thank
as
you.
it stands right now in the queue, Riggs, Manning, Anderson, Weems. I wrote it down so I can, okay.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, and hopefully Mrs. Weems heard that as well, so you're still with us. Okay, so we are welcoming. No, I meant you're still in the queue is what I meant to say. I know you're with us. So we're ready to welcome our team here for an overview of our World Languages and Spanish Immersion Program, starting with Ms. DeVries, Dr. DeVries.
Good evening, Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chair Melnick, school board members. I am Nicole DeVries, Director of K-12 and Gifted Programs, and I'm here today to present an overview of our World Languages program, including the Spanish Immersion program that is offered to students in Virginia Beach. We are proud in Virginia Beach to offer students a robust World Languages pathway that begins for most students in middle school and for some through our Spanish Immersion program at the elementary level. In many instances, students graduate Virginia Beach schools fluent in their language of study and with a biliteracy seal on their diplomas. Today's presentation will provide an overview of the World Languages course offerings and aligned programs offered to students. In addition, we will discuss the elementary and middle school Spanish Immersion program, as well as next steps for Spanish Immersion expansion. I am not forwarding it. Let's see. It's not working. There we go. Thank you. The Virginia Department of Education sets forth the graduation requirements for world languages. For students who will earn a standard diploma, a world language course is optional. For those who do decide to take a world language course, that course would satisfy the elective credit requirement for graduation. Students who seek to earn an advanced diploma must take 3 years of the same language or may take 2 years each of 2 different languages. In middle school, students are afforded the opportunity to take a high school credit course in world language. Most middle schools offer the credit course starting in 7th grade. Middle school students are also able to take a 9 weeks exploratory course as an introduction to world language. This course is not a prerequisite for the credit-bearing course, but it does provide a snapshot of the learning in which students engage when they move to the credit-bearing language courses. Languages such as Arabic or Chinese are only offered as part of the Global Studies and World Languages Academy program at Tallwood High School, but you can see all of the languages on the slide that we offer in Virginia Beach schools. The Global Studies and World Language Academy at Tallwood High School prepares students for world citizenship by providing opportunities to develop the intellectual skills needed to make global connections among all disciplines. The 3 major themes embedded throughout the coursework of this program are global issues, global systems, and global cultures. As such, geography is integrated into every academy course, and students have unique opportunities to participate in international exchange programs as well as international travel. As part of the academy program requirement, all students complete an academy project featuring an in-depth study of a global culture and a global issue of concern. Components of this project include community service, cultural investigation, and the development of a portfolio. The project is presented to a panel for feedback and review in the student's senior year of high school. Another opportunity for students interested in world languages throughout the school division is to earn the Virginia Diploma Seal of Biliteracy. This seal can be earned by students who show proficiency in a second language. Assessments are arranged through the school counselor's office, and students who achieve a certain level of proficiency are awarded the seal on their diploma. In 2019, 337 VBCPS students were awarded this seal, which certifies them as being biliterate. This lifetime credential is looked upon favorably by colleges and employers. I'm excited to report that as our school division's English learner population grows, the World Languages Coordinator and English as a Second Language Coordinator are working together to identify those English learners in Virginia Beach whose home language is not English and may be successful on the Seal of Biliteracy assessment as students who also may be assessed in their home language and be awarded the seal on their diplomas. VBCPS offers advanced placement courses for the most advanced language learners. VBCPS offers 6 different AP courses for world languages, including AP French, German, Japanese, Latin, Spanish language, and Spanish literature. The Governor's World Language Summer Residential Programs are offered by the Virginia Department of Education and are available for the Commonwealth's most motivated and advanced high school language students. Students must apply and be recommended by their teachers for this program. They are required to take a placement test for all languages except Japanese. For 3 weeks, students experience learning on a college campus. They are not permitted to use English as they delve into the language and culture of French, German, or Spanish. Japanese and Latin are partial immersion academies. There were 25 applicants from VBCPS for the 2019 Summer Academies. The StarTalk Russian and Chinese academies immerse up to 120 elementary students in 3 weeks of intense language acquisition. The program is open to all rising 5th graders in VBCPS. Students are accepted into the program through a lottery system. Rising 6th graders who participated in the program the previous summer may apply to participate in an advanced course. The program is fully funded by a grant. Unfortunately, because of COVID this past summer, StarTalk could not occur, and the Governor's World Language Summer Academy did offer a virtual rendition of that program, but we're looking forward to resuming both programs this upcoming summer. So now this takes us to our Spanish immersion program. Virginia Beach Schools uses a one-way 50-50 language immersion instructional model. In grades 1 through 5, students spend approximately half of their day immersed in the target language and the other half of their day receiving instruction in English. A Spanish immersion teacher delivers instruction in Spanish during mathematics and science content areas that lend themselves to hands-on activities and the use of manipulatives. Students receive instruction in English during language arts and social studies. The immersion teachers team with the grade level English language arts teachers to embed reading and writing skills across the content areas and to integrate the whole VBCPS curriculum. Lessons in elective classes such as art, music, and PE are held in English. Students completing the elementary world language immersion program may continue their study of Spanish in the middle school world language immersion program. In grades 6 through 8, students receive social studies instruction in the target language. They also refine their knowledge of the target language by taking a world language course specifically designed for immersion students for high school credit. Beginning as 6th graders with a level 1 immersion language course, students can complete 3 years of high school world language credit by the end of 8th grade. This prepares them for advanced world language study during high school, where they may take levels 4, 5, AP Language, and AP Literature. Students completing the elementary and middle school world language immersion program with a strong record, a 3.0 GPA and no disciplinary infractions, are guaranteed acceptance into the Global Studies and World Languages Academy at Tallwood High School. With all of the amazing happenings within our elementary and middle school immersion programs, we wanted to highlight students and their work as they immersed in the language through their content. You can walk into any immersion classroom and you will see students communicating and collaborating in Spanish, answering teacher questions in Spanish, completing graphic organizers in Spanish, and also projects in the target language. The goal in these classrooms is 100% immersion throughout their time working in the content areas. You can follow the immersion program on Twitter at hashtag VBImmersion. I should mention, and I might have skipped a slide, that our schools that are currently immersion program schools are Christopher Farms Elementary School at the elementary level, Allenton Elementary School, and Trantwood Elementary School. And then at the middle school level, we have immersion programs at the Lansdowne Middle School and at Great Neck Middle School, which just started their program this year. So I'm thrilled this evening to be joined by 2 educators who work with the Spanish Immersion Program, Mrs. Charlene Guerin, the principal of Allenton Elementary School, and where one of our 3 immersion programs is housed, and Miss Isabel Perez, a 2nd grade immersion teacher at Allenton Elementary School. I have asked Mrs. Guerin and Ms. Perez to share their firsthand experiences with the immersion program in Allenton, and so I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Guerin at this point.
Thank you, Dr. DeVries, and welcome, Ms. Karen.
Good evening. Good evening. And thank you for giving me an opportunity to come and give you a brief overview of the Spanish Immersion Program at the elementary level. I want to start with the mission. The mission of the Immersion Program is to provide students with rigorous academic instruction in the target language to develop biliteracy skills and a multicultural perspective to empower students and actively engage in our global community. So the program is pretty amazing. It's wonderful to see the enthusiasm throughout our entire community, and they really are embracing our program. So just kind of to piggyback on what Dr. DeVries mentioned, the Spanish Immersion Program at the elementary is offered in grades 1 through 5, and the students are zoned to our specific schools. And we use a lottery system for students to be part of the program. We have 2 classes at each grade level, and as Dr. DeVries mentioned, we have half of the school day is in Spanish, and they have math and science in Spanish, and the other half of the day they have language arts and social studies in English. The teachers speak only in Spanish throughout the day when the teachers are with the children for the Spanish portion of the day. They toggle a little bit in the beginning of the school year just to make sure the children are feeling comfortable with the language, but they are primarily speaking Spanish the entire half of the day for the children. And we also do morning meeting and closing circles in Spanish as well. So our program continues to grow and get stronger every single year due to the excellent teaching staff that we have and the professional development that the team engages in throughout the division and conferences that we attend.
The three elementary schools, Allenton, Trentwood, and Christopher Farms, we developed a strong partnership. Our teachers are continuously planning with one another and collaborating with one another on lessons. So it's not just one school doing it now. So we have teachers at first grade across the division, across those three schools. Second grade teachers collaborate. So it's a really strong partnership, and I feel as though our program is getting really strong because of the collaborative nature. So our program started off only as a listening and speaking program, but however, throughout the last several years, we've added the reading and writing in Spanish. So all 4 components of literacy are now part of our Spanish immersion program. The program challenges and engages students to think critically, and it is pretty amazing to see how their critical thinking skills develop throughout from grade 1 through grade 5. We have developed a strong relationship with our feeder schools this past year. Great Neck Middle School has been collaborating with our teachers this year. They've actually sent their teachers over to do many learning walks, and they participate in our planning and our professional development sessions. And they welcomed our students this year, the first year. And next year, Trentwood will be sending students to Great Neck Middle School, so they'll be having 2 different schools going and feeding into Great Neck. Our community has been really impressed with the level of engagement and the proficiency levels of our students while visiting on learning walks and information meetings. We have an open door policy. Well, typically, right now, it's on hold. But we welcome parents to come and see our program. And when we have our information meetings for parents to become part of our program, we open up our doors and we show them the program. So, and they have been really impressed. I actually talked recently to a few parents, and a few parents have shared a few things with me I would like to share with you. One parent said the Allenton Spanish Immersion Program exceeds all of our expectations. My daughter enjoyed learning from the unique teachers at Allenton. Learning in language at an elementary level was a great path and it's a great start, and I'm excited to see where the Spanish immersion journey will take her. Another parent said, as I enjoy watching both of my daughters in the program, it's amazing to see how much Spanish they know, even though they both have very different learning styles. A few students mentioned that my dad's family is from Puerto Rico, and I'm able to speak to them in Spanish. And I am beyond happy that their neighbor actually is in the Spanish program, and now we have these older children helping the younger children. One specific comment that I really liked was that I enjoy Spanish immersion program at Allenton because it challenges me, and I like a challenge. And I have to tell you, it's quite interesting when I am in visiting classrooms and the teacher's teaching in Spanish and I'm observing. Sometimes I lean over to the children and they translate for me. They get a little chuckle out of it, but it's pretty impressive to see how they're speaking and conversing in Spanish throughout the day. So many members of our board actually visited Allenton Elementary School to see our Spanish immersion program, and I welcome all of you, if you're interested, to stop out to see our program. It's pretty impressive, and I know you'll be impressed with the engagement and the students' proficiency in the language as well. So with that being said, I would like to introduce you to one of our fabulous teachers, Senorita Izzy Perez, and she is quite passionate about our program, and I know she's going to share some interesting information with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Karen. Welcome.
Thank you very much. This is my first time ever, so thank you.
Thank you for your patience, too.
Oh, of course. Well, I just want to jump off of what they've been speaking about the Spanish immersion program, and it's really amazing to see the deep connections that the students do make. When they first come to us, there's a big difference between like rote memory and when you just kind of express certain ideas and you do it in separate forms. And so when you talk about like Spanish 1, Spanish 2, you might talk about this is an adjective and this is how you use it. Well, with the Spanish immersion program, you do it all completely immersed. So they don't even realize they're learning these things, but we're giving it to them in a very connected way that then they can continue to expand as they move forward. So when you talk about an idea, it's something that you either have or you don't have. So if you're just teaching the ideas, like you look at the bottom little circle with the little dots, the dots represent ideas. Naturally, we will make certain connections on our own. However, when you look at the circle on the right, that represents your brain. The dots are your ideas again. And then the connections that we're providing them with as we're teaching will connect with both the English side and the Spanish side. So if English Language Arts is teaching adjectives, we'll also extend that adjective lesson on our side, and we'll talk about both adjectives describe in both sides, but then we'll also talk about the differences and similarities of the language. So as the students move forward, they're making connections cross-curricularly, and cross-linguistically. And then they start making connections, and by the end of just one school year, things that they come up with and connections that they make academically are just mind blowing. And I've taught second grade for 12 years and they still continue to blow my mind and come up with ideas that I've never even thought of on my own. So it's actually really impressive. So the other idea that I wanted to talk about was, okay, so how do we do that? And how do we continue the rigorous program, the rigorous Virginia Beach City Public Schools guidelines, and do that in a totally different language without using their native English? So there's two main approaches that are considered what we follow, not considered, it is what we follow. But you have comprehensible input, and then you also have TPR. For comprehensible input, that basically explains how we're giving them greater comprehension without going to the English side. We're giving them more input to understand what's happening. So if I want to teach the students correr or run in Spanish, I'm not going to say correr means to run. I'm going to start running down the classroom and just say, correr! And then they're going to pick it up. So if they don't know, or if I say panic in Spanish and I'm literally panicking, they're going to understand the gesture and get more comprehension just from what I'm providing them with. So some of those things that we do within the comprehensible input include songs, we sing, we dance, we do all sorts of, it's very interactive. We do gestures, and so you might walk by our classrooms or come in and think that we're putting on a show or we're actors and actresses, but really it's all part of providing that enhanced comprehension to the students. We use visuals, we use cognates, there's all sorts of exact cognates like the word radio, it's exactly the same in both, and then there you can enhance the phonetic differences and similarities within languages. So that's an exact cognate. You have cognates like elefante, which in English is elephant. So you use your knowledge from your main language to help you figure out the other language. And then TPR is total physical response, and that's where you're learning it through action. So again, we do our very best to not go to the English language. We use all these different resources and more to help them understand. So with TPR, while I'm sitting here and I'm running down the room yelling, corre! I'm activating that right side of their brain. So then when we integrate that in with their writing and listening, that then connects it over to the left side of their brain. So when you're using both sides of your brain constantly and you're making all of these connections and you're working so hard all of the time, it really does push you to become an incredibly deep critical thinker. So these students, I mean, in 1 year, and then by the time they get to 5th grade, it's absolutely amazing what they come up with. And they really do the whole 5 C's. They do the communication collaborative. Like, they are absolutely amazing. So that's it for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think it's clear that you could see the enthusiasm for the program and why we get such a positive response from our community about it. Thank you to you both. So with that said, Mrs. Guerin started talking a little bit about our cross-school collaboration. As you just heard, instruction within an immersion classroom is unique, absolutely, having to attend to both acquisition of content and acquisition of language. Therefore, immersion teachers, in addition to their content-based professional learning, engage in professional learning and collaborative planning specific to immersion as well. In the past year and a half, they have engaged in the development of language proficiency benchmarks and benchmark assessments for each grade level, which was not something previously in place. This work, led by our World Languages Coordinator, Kelly Arbel, and our instructional specialist, Zach Newman, will guide instructional practice in the immersion classroom and provide a framework for what students should be able to know and do in the language each 9 weeks throughout their time in the immersion program. As these benchmarks and assessments begin to be implemented at the elementary level this year, Kelly and Zach will begin working with the middle school immersion teachers this year to use the data from the grade 5 students as a springboard into instruction at the middle school level. This kind of vertical alignment is crucial for a cohesive immersion program. As such, the elementary and middle schools have spent time over the past several years conducting learning walks and site visits across levels to learn from one another. The 3 elementary schools often collaborate on community events, such as open houses. And this summer, we launched our first ever summer immersion boot camp for rising 2nd through 5th graders across the 3 elementary schools. Students spent 1 hour a day for a week practicing their language skills with an immersion teacher from one of the 3 schools. So they weren't necessarily paired up with a teacher from their own school, which was kind of neat. This first year,
of this optional and virtual this year boot camp was highly successful with over 200 students participating. So what's next for our Spanish immersion program? Because the English learner population in Virginia Beach is quickly growing, with Spanish being the top language spoken by English learners in Virginia Beach, it is a natural fit to expand the immersion program and the model we use to a dual language immersion structure. Dual language immersion is a best practice in English language instruction and should be considered for schools with larger numbers of native Spanish-speaking students. In a dual language model, at least 25% of the class consists of English learners, while the other members of the class are Spanish learners. Language acquisition strategies are used by the classroom and ESL teachers to support native Spanish-speaking students learning English and the native English-speaking students learning Spanish. When funding becomes available, expansion of the immersion program using a dual language model is being considered for the Bayside Elementary School and Cook Elementary School, as both schools have high numbers of native Spanish-speaking students. We look forward to the time when this program can be expanded. So this concludes the overview of the World Languages and Spanish Immersion Program in Virginia Beach. At this time, I'm joined by Mrs. Guerin and Mrs. Perez from Allenton, as well as by Mrs. Kelly Arbel, World Languages Coordinator, to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, Mrs. Hughes?
I would just like to say that I did do a school visit and we walked through this Spanish immersion program. And then a couple years before that, as a sub, I subbed in the program. And so I was there all day long, and it was impressive. It was a lot of fun. But I was a little bit concerned because I do not speak Spanish, yet I had no problem being there all day. So it was very user-friendly.
I'm sure you learned a lot from them as well.
I absolutely did.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards.
Well, it's phenomenal. I mean, we probably didn't need to know how good it was, because I think we already did. But we need to move a lot faster than we're going. I mean, I feel happy for those schools that got it, but I feel very unhappy about the schools that don't have it. And I think there's even more to it than what you laid out. I talked to a parent like 2 days ago whose child is at Princess Anne Middle School, and he's in Spanish 3 as an 8th grader. Why? Because he went to Christopher Farms.
Yes.
So we're covering those kids into the middle school with a course. It's not an immersion program, I understand that.
Correct, right.
So we're doing a whole lot.
Yeah.
But we need to do a whole lot all over the city. And I'm glad it's going into Bayside, but, I've got to be a little bit parochial here. I'm a representative for the Kempsville district, and Centerville doesn't have any either. And so, we try not to put on our district hats too much, but, we're begging from the west side, okay? Thank you.
Madam Chair, please add Ms. Weems to the queue.
All right, Mrs. Weems, you're on.
Yes, thank you. I am such a big fan of this program, and I agree with Mr. Edwards, because I can remember going to Christopher Farms when Amy Cashwell was there and looking at the program. So that's been quite a while. And then I was able to go to Allenton just this past year, and it's just such a great program. I'm glad to, of course, as the Bayside rep, Dan, I'm very glad to see it at Bayside. But I agree with you that we really need to, find the funding and try to push this forward quicker, because we all know that these students are sponges at this age, and that if we truly want them to be able to speak a second language, this is the way to do it. My questions are, do you have waiting lists? And if so, how do you handle that? Or do you have vacancies, and how do you handle the vacant spots?
I'm going to ask Mrs. Guerin to come up to answer that, since she's had experience with waiting lists.
We do have waiting lists, and we have a list of, and we communicate with the parents. We let them know that they're on the waiting list, and when we have an opening, we will make phone calls to those parents to see if they're still interested. If the opening happens mid-school year, the parents have to make a decision whether or not they want to pull them out of the class that they're in now to join the program. We only allow children to switch groups after the second half of second grade. So if they go beyond second half of second grade, then we're too kind of far into the language, and it's hard to get the kids caught up. However, when we have children move into our neighborhoods and they move in third grade, fourth grade, or fifth grade, and they come from a program that is comparable, we definitely enroll them immediately if we have space. And we typically have space in third, fourth, and fifth grade because children are going and being accepted into ODS. We live in a military communities. Children leave because of life choices. So we do have vacancies throughout our schools. But typically in first and second grade, we fill those positions, those spots.
Okay, so you don't take out of zone for vacancies.
If we have a vacancy, then we have a list of students that are out of zone wanting to come in. If we have space and we don't have anyone on the wait list, we will take someone from out of zone. And then also, if I could just add, also if they move, if they're out of zone, they have to provide their own transportation.
Okay, thank you so much. Keep up the good work. I really enjoyed it, and I think it's a phenomenal program. Thank you.
We have to wrap. Thank you so much. And for those of us who have more questions about high school level, can we contact you, Dr. DeVries?
Absolutely.
But I was the one who asked for this as a workshop item back in the spring, so I appreciate the staff keeping it in the queue. And for all of you who took the time today, best of luck with this school year with your students. Okay. So this workshop is adjourned. We'll reconvene for formal meeting, 6 o'clock.